So I have 70 hours on my Husqvarna TX300 and I've never opened any of the pivot points on it. My suspension is currently off with factory connection getting refreshed, revalved, and some upgrades. I wiped down everything last night with a damp rag so I'm not working with dirty parts. I broke my collarbone just under 2 weeks ago, so I'm working a little slower than usual. Check out my channel for footage of that. I always clean off real well around the dust seals to ensure I get no dirt contamination in the bearings when servicing them. I'm also using Bike Grease 2000 for motor wrecks, as recommended in the owner's manual and service manual. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first swing arm bearing here. It's always a little difficult to pull these 3-piece collars out. I don't like to use a pick or anything sharp, as I'm very particular and I don't want to scratch or get a metal flake anywhere. Looks like there's still some light lubrication in there. I see no damage. So we're just going to take our time and not fully pull the collar out, because then you run a risk of some needles falling out of place. Oops, looks like I still managed to lose a needle. So I'm just going to have to carefully take my time and put that back in place and finish greasing this one up. There's also something else interesting. I found the collar piece that sits between the frame and the swing arm. It appears that collar is rubbing some steel near the bearing race, as it has some sharp metal bits cutting and hanging, but still attached to the collar. You can see in the photos here some light wear on the outside versus the inside collar. As soon as when the swing arm bolt is tightened down, it causes the collar to be clamped. So I just clean up the collar and put it back in place. It happened with both swing arm sides, and I don't see any real way to avoid it. Let's be clear though, I saw no metal flakes or debris behind the dust seal that was free floating, so that was nice, and everything looked to be in good working order. Let's go ahead and dig into the other side of the swing arm here. Everything looks to be in good working order. I see lubricant. The outside collar is marred, just like I said, so I cleaned that up prior to reassembling. It's time to go ahead and loosen these linkage bolts up. I'd probably have been better off to loosen these up prior to removing the shock. Oh well. One of the bolts seems frozen up, so I have to work on it a little bit to remove it. Upon removal, I don't see anything that indicates it was seized in place. I just think it was because it was a really tight fit and had no lubricant on it. Breaking into triangle bearing 1 here, I see it has some lubricant on it. Also note, I use zip ties to ensure I don't have bearing collars falling out when I'm not attending to those particular bearings. Checking out the second triangle bearing here, it appears to have some lubricant on there as well. Bearing 3 has lubricant, so let's just add some grease and seal that one back up too. Last on the linkages is the pullrod bearing. The bearings here look good, and so do the dust seals like the rest. The bearing sleeve or shaft though that the bearings ride on shows some corrosion right where the dust seals are. So it appears that a rock or maybe some dust and water got in there. I grease everything up and reassemble, but I will be replacing the bearing sleeve just to ensure the dust seals have a perfectly smooth surface to seal against. Last bearing here is a steering head bearing. I rigged up a contraption to the ceiling to lift the bars up cleanly. As you can see here, there appears to be no lack of grease on the steering head bearings. I also thought the grease looked a strange color initially, and come to find out the owner's manual recommends an SKF branded grease for this. I believe some of the parts on the steering head are also SKF branded, so I'm not sure if that ties into it. My Motor Rex and SKF branded grease appear to carry very similar specs, as both are NLGI grade 2, which says they're around the same thickness. The only difference I see between the two really is that the SKF grease is calcium sulfonate and the Motorex grease is, I believe, a calcium 12 hydroxysterate grease. The two greases have borderline compatibility when mixing, but that tells me I'm going to use my Motorex grease here too. So I packed the bearings with the Motorex Bike Grease 2000, and you can actually see some of the old grease getting pushed out. I also lay down a thick layer of grease on the races in the frame. Hopefully this video helps you with your bike. I don't worry too much about greasing any ball bearings like in the rear brake lever or wheel bearings, because it's easy to damage the rubber bearing seals there. I just replace them as needed. And most important of all, knowing what I know now, would I wait so long to do it again? Absolutely. I bought a new bike, not a project.